appreciate you being here. As long as you can keep that mic in front of you at all times, we can make a good record and we'll all be able to hear. Thank you. Counsel.
Good morning. If you could state your name for the record.
My name is Scott Larson, Larson.
What is your occupation?
I am a forensic toxicologist.
Briefly tell us what that means.
Forensic toxicology is the field of testing biological specimens for drugs, alcohol, and poisons.
I want to talk about what kind of training and education is required for this position. Can you briefly go through your educational background?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree in science in biology and another bachelor of science in medical technology and a master's degree in pharmaceutical sciences.
How long have you been a forensic toxicologist?
For just over 20 years.
Does it require, you just listed the degrees that you have, does it require those degrees, the job?
Some base level science degree is necessary, yes.
Does it require, does your specific job title require any certifications?
I've been board certified by the American Board of Forensic Toxicology since 2010, and that's one of the requirements at my employment.
To keep that board certification, do you have to do some kind of continuing education requirements every year, anything like that?
Yes, I've been doing continuing education over the course of my entire career, but specifically the board certification requires a minimum amount of continuing education per year that gets documented and turned in.
Or do you always keep current on that?
Yes.
When we're talking about your job, is it fair to call them tests, or do you run tests on blood or specimens for substances? How should I refer to that?
Tests or assays, yes.
About how many tests do you perform in a typical year?
Well, for my position at this point, what I do is review. So in terms of reviewing analytical data, I review roughly 12,500 cases per year.
At what point, at one point in your career did you actually do the testing?
Yes, for many years. I started as a bench toxicologist in my first job and did that for probably the first 10 to 15 years.
And now it sounds like your job is to review the tests that have been done by somebody else?
Yes.
And what are you reviewing for? What does that look like?
So the NMS, where my laboratory that I work for, we run basically in like an assembly line type system, and I'm on the last phase of that line. And what I look at is all of the initial documentation that gets turned into our laboratory, the chain of custody, which tracks the sample and what happens to the sample through its lifespan and the testing at the lab, all of the analytical screening data, confirmation data. I write the report and then release it to the agency that requested it.
Do you know what case we're here today about?
Yes.
Kacee Terry, does that name ring a bell?
Yes.
Did you review the testing that was done on the specimens involved in this case?
Yes, I released 2 reports on this case.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 13. You have a screen up there. Let me know when you're able to see that. Sometimes it flickers a bit before it stays.
Came and went. There we go. It's on. Ooh.
It'll just takes a bit to warm up.
Do you see that?
I do, yes.
Do you recognize that?
I do, yes.
What is this?
This is a toxicology report released from our laboratory.
Is this something that you prepared or
Yep.
reviewed?
Yes.
Sorry, which of those? Prepared, reviewed, both?
Both.
State moves to admit Exhibit 13.
No objection.
Court received States 13. Wish to publish?
Yes, thank you. All right, before we get to, there's a box that says positive findings. I'm going to get to those in a second. If we can scroll down, I want to ask just briefly so the jury can understand when we're talking about, it says gray stopper, red stopper, different tubes and caps. I want to go through what those things mean. So I guess, can you explain the different tube types? Let's start there.
Yes, a gray stopper tube is, excuse me, a gray stopper tube is the recommended tube in forensic toxicology. It contains two different components, potassium oxalate and sodium fluoride. The potassium oxalate helps make it so the blood does not coagulate and stays in a liquid form. The sodium nitrate, or the sodium fluoride, I'm sorry, is an antibacterial, so that will eliminate bacterial growth within the blood sample. A red top tube or a red stopper tube does not contain anything, and that means there will be levels of coagulation in serum. A white cap plastic container, the specimen number 8, the liver, came in, does not contain anything. It's just a normal plastic cup with no additives whatsoever. These different types of containers are used just because different tests have different recommendations on what additives are needed. So, but gray top tubes is standard in forensic toxicology.
Okay. If we look over a few columns, there's something labeled matrix source, and there's hospital blood, femoral blood, and a few other things. What does hospital blood mean?
Hospital blood is just blood that is collected at the hospital prior to death.
Prior to death.
Yes.
What does femoral blood mean?
Femoral blood is postmortem blood, and that is what's called peripheral blood, and that would be collected from your femoral artery, which is in the kind of the upper section of your thigh.
When you're doing your testing or your review, does it make a difference whether something is hospital blood or femoral blood?
It does not make any difference in the testing. That's all done the same. It does make differences sometimes in your interpretation of those results.
So it looks like in this case we have both hospital blood and femoral blood.
Yes.
Why might that make a difference in results?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons. I think the first one is if you look under collection, date, and time, the hospital blood was drawn on August 12th of 2024, where the femoral blood was collected on August 16th. So with that 4-day window, there you would expect different results because your body could metabolize, things like that. So the hospital blood would be theoretically, we would receive results that would happen before any the hospital, anything that the hospital would have given them. You'd see those results more in the femoral blood, so you'd see differences in the results.
And then also you mentioned hospital blood is prior to death, femoral blood is after death. Can death make a difference in what's in, I guess, a sample?
Yes, it can. There's different types of activities that can happen in the body post-death. One of them is called postmortem redistribution, which is just the kind of diffusion of drugs from your central cavity throughout your body. So that can kind of increase the concentration of certain drugs. You sometimes can also get, in certain circumstances, increases or the artificial creation of ethanol from bacteria in your body using glucose to create alcohol. So things like, there are some differences, yes.
Okay. I want to scroll down on the exhibit. At the top, we see detailed findings, analysis, and comments. I want to go through this. The first one is naloxone, and I'm sorry, to clarify, these would be, I guess, tell us what exact findings these relate to. I guess, what patient are we talking about?
This would be from Kacee Terry.
Okay. What is naloxone?
Naloxone is a opiate antagonist drug that's used usually in hospitals, but now you can get it outside of hospital use to stop opiate overdoses.
And the result here was what?
It was presumptive positive. This is something that came up in our initial drug screen that is not part of normal confirmation. So it came up on a screen, but it was not confirmed.
Is naloxone typically given in a medical setting in certain circumstances?
Typically, yes. Many times if someone is kind of struggling, they will just, nowadays, hospitals will just automatically give naloxone based on the rise of opiate overdoses across the country.
So even if it's not confirmed that an opioid overdose is...
Yes, because it doesn't hurt anyone, so it'll either help them or it doesn't matter.
Okay. The next one we see down is oxycodone free. What is oxycodone? What is oxycodone, first of all?
Oxycodone is a narcotic analgesic used for pain relief.
And what does the free mean?
It can be found in two different ways in the body, either free, which means not bound by plasma, or conjugated. So we test for free, which is the normal forensic way, but we just like to clarify what we're reporting.
Okay. What was the result here for oxycodone?
It came up in the initial drug screen, and then it was then followed by a confirmation, and it was 34 nanograms per mil.
And what was the specimen source for that?
Hospital blood.
34 nanograms per milliliter. Help us understand what that result means.
34 nanograms per mil would be considered a therapeutic dose of oxycodone.
For anybody?
Yes, I mean, that would be like your normal prescription with a tablet. Obviously, there are different doctors would give different people different prescription amounts of the amount that they would take, but this falls within the range that you would expect.
So you would not expect 34 nanograms per milliliter to cause an overdose?
Not unless there's very unique circumstances.
We talked before about naloxone, which is given if an opioid overdose is suspected. Would that being given at the hospital lower the oxycodone level in the blood?
It wouldn't change the oxycodone level. What it would mean is the oxycodone would not be able to bind to the appropriate receptor because the naloxone would be blocking that receptor.
Okay, so this
So
34...
it doesn't change the concentration, just whether it's activating the downstream effect in the body.
Okay. We're talking about Kacee Terry here. If she had been prescribed oxycodone and had been taking it for years, does that matter in your interpretation of these levels?
It would. There's something in the human body called tolerance that basically the more you take any drug, your body creates a certain level of tolerance to some of the side effects from that. So that's one of the questions I always would ask a medical examiner or coroner that I'm working with is if someone has a prescription for that, because if there is a prescription, especially for a long period of time, you would expect a level of tolerance.
Is that something that you did in this case?
I did not have any conversations with the medical examiner in this case.
Is this level consistent with what you would see in somebody prescribed oxycodone?
Yes.
Let's go down to oxymorphone-free. What is oxymorphone?
So oxymorphone is also a narcotic analgesic that you can get prescribed, but in addition to that, it is a metabolite of oxycodone. So as oxycodone is breaking down in your body, there's a different enzymatic pathways that break it down to that, and then to other later stage compounds, which is just a way for the body to get rid of the oxycodone out of your body.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a few questions just to make sure that I and the jury understand. You referenced something called a metabolite. What does that mean?
So when you take any drug, or most drugs, not every drug, but most drugs, your body will start breaking it down into similar compounds that are easier to clear out of the body.
So when we're talking about oxymorphone and oxycodone, is oxymorphone a separate drug that is given? Or when you're talking about being a metabolite, it's what oxycodone turns into inside of the body? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and the answer is it can be both.
Okay.
It would be my interpretation based on the ratios of the oxycodone to oxymorphone found in this case, that most likely this, the decedent was taking oxycodone, and the oxymorphone that we found was as a metabolite and not taken as a separate drug.
Okay. Here we see under oxymorphone, the result is what?
2.7 nanograms per mil, which is about roughly 1/10 the oxycodone, which is roughly the relationship we see.
So when you're talking about the ratio leading to your interpretation that it's a breaking down metabolite, is that relevant to that?
Yes.
Let's go to the next one, promethazine. What is that?
Promethazine is an antihistamine that's found in over-the-counter allergy medication.
Does it require a prescription? I know you just mentioned over-the-counter.
No, typically it does not.
Is it also something that can be prescribed in certain circumstances? If you know?
There are probably prescriptions, but the majority of the people that use promethazine are just from over-the-counter medications.
I believe you said it's an antihistamine. Does it have any other uses that it is given for?
There may be some off-level use or off-label uses, but I'm not aware of that.
Does promethazine have any central nervous system effects?
Promethazine is an interesting drug in terms of it's been shown there's a wide variance within the population. The majority of time it has central nervous system depressant effects. There is a subset of the population that will have stimulant effects from it. So it kind of falls on both sides. But in general, it's thought of as having central nervous system depressant effects.
And maybe everybody knows this, maybe this is common knowledge, but briefly tell us what central nervous system depressant effects means.
So there's different, you can have stimulant effects or depressant effects. Depressant effects in general could lead to things like drowsiness, maybe a little bit of uncoordination depending on the drug. And then that would be your normal symptoms that you would just get. In worst case scenario, it can lead to respiratory depression and death.
You mentioned worst case scenario. I guess, let me ask first, what's the result we see here?
It is 370 nanograms per mil.
What does that level indicate to you?
That would indicate to me, I would still consider that a therapeutic level of promethazine. There's a fairly wide range in promethazine of what people see in terms of the therapeutic. There's a very long, it takes the body a long time to eliminate promethazine. So if someone is taking it for example, for like allergy medication for like multiple days, because it takes a long time for your body to eliminate it, you can kind of build up concentration even if you're taking it at normal doses.
You mentioned worst case scenario, you might even see a death from this substance. Is this level anywhere near that level?
Well, to clarify, I was talking about just in general of central nervous system depressants.
Oh, okay.
But no, I would consider this within the therapeutic range of promethazine.
Is there a concentration of promethazine, like a level that would start being concerning to you?
There's been promethazine itself as a sole drug. There have been overdoses reported at, say, 4,000, 5,000 nanograms per mil. There are some mixed drug intoxications at like the 1,800 nanogram per mil range, but I'm not aware of any where this would be one of the main drugs this low, especially with in context with the other drugs that are found.
The next one down is alprazolam. What is that?
Alprazolam is a benzodiazepine that's used to treat like anxiety.
And again, maybe this is common knowledge, but briefly explain what a benzodiazepine is.
So this is There are a lot of benzodiazepines on the market. They are used for a really broad range of uses, a lot of them tied to anxiety.
Does that have a central nervous system depressant effect?
Yes,
What's the result that we see here?
100 nanograms per mil.
Is this a level that was concerning to you?
It's on the high end of the therapeutic range, but within what you would expect, depending on, how it was taken.
When you're reviewing these results and creating this report, are you aware that a death has occurred?
Well, I'm aware that deaths occurred just because postmortem samples were submitted to the laboratory. I rarely have very much information when I'm releasing the report. So kind of toxicology falls into two phases. One is the analytical testing, and that's what I focus on when I'm releasing the report. The interpretation would come later if asked.
So when you are creating this report, because there is femoral blood, you're aware that a death has occurred.
Yes.
But you don't have much other information about what's going on.
No.
When you created this report and initially made your findings, were you aware that insulin was involved in this case?
I do not believe so, no.
At some point, did you learn that insulin was involved?
Yes.
Do you remember when you found that out?
Well, I would have found it out for sure during like a pretrial meetings and pretrial calls. There is a submission form that gets sent in from the submitting agency. I don't remember if insulin was noted in that. Like I said, most of the time we get almost no information. So when I focus on the review of cases, it's normally just the demographics, like the name, the submitting agency, things like that. I don't really look at the case history at that point because it doesn't matter to me.
Before you knew that insulin was involved, based on the results that we see here, did it make sense to you that somebody would have died solely from these drugs at the levels that we're seeing present here?
I would not have expected someone to die unless, like I said, there were special circumstances, and that does come up sometimes, and that would normally be through conversation with a medical examiner on what they found at autopsy.
Do any of these drugs listed interact with insulin in a way that explains death?
I am not aware of that.
At some point, were you made aware of Ms. Terry's glucose level when she was taken to the hospital?
No.
Based on your training and experience, would it be typical of somebody to die based solely on the drugs that we see present here, absent some other circumstance?
I would say not, outside of special circumstances.
Is insulin being on board, would you consider that a special circumstance?
Yes.
Does that, I guess, illuminate your findings or your conclusions here in any way?
Yes.
In what way?
Well, in a way that it would answer as a more obvious potential cause of death than this drug grouping. But again, I want to stress that, determining cause of death is not really the job of a toxicologist. That's the job of a medical examiner.
Fair enough. Maybe I failed to ask you this. What lab do you work for?
I work for NMS Labs.
Does your lab test for insulin?
We do not, no.
Why not?
There are real analytical challenges with testing for insulin. So we had a test years ago, and before I even started there, and stopped testing for it, and I really don't know the background of that. But in my 20 years of working in laboratories, I've never worked in a lab that tested for insulin.
You mentioned analytical challenges to testing for insulin. Do you know more about what that might mean?
I can speak to it a little bit. I think one of the main issues is that there's both insulin produced in your body, and then synthetic insulin that's given. And I think there are issues differentiating between the two.
Does stability issues in the blood relate to that at all in terms of testing for insulin?
It may, I have to admit, I don't, because I've never worked in a lab with insulin testing, I really don't have a lot of background on all of the analytical approaches, so I can't really speak very deeply in that.
Do you know of any forensic toxicology lab in the country that has the ability to test for insulin?
Not that I'm aware of, though I don't know if there is one or not.
Do you remember if you looked into it for this case?
I believe I have been asked and have looked into it, and I was not able to find one.
So we've distinguished between hospital blood and femoral blood, and on all these results that we're seeing here, the source is hospital blood. Are you able to tell how long before the blood draw at the hospital Ms. Terry would have been given or taken these medications?
No.
Would you expect, so we talked about how oxymorphone is a metabolite of oxycodone. Would you expect to see other metabolites of the other drugs involved? Does that question make sense?
It does. We do not, there would be theoretically other compounds there, but we don't test for those other compounds.
What is, when I say the term half-life of a drug, do you know what that term means?
Yes.
What does it mean?
So the half-life of a drug is basically the amount of time that it takes for your body to eliminate half of the blood concentration of that drug. So, you know, if, like for example, oxycodone has a 5-hour half-life, so you would expect the concentration to get cut in half every 5 hours.
Do different drugs have different half-lives?
Yes.
If a half-life is longer in a certain drug, what does that mean in terms of how it's breaking down in the body?
It just means it would take longer. So for example, and when I say like oxycodone is 5 and promethazine is, the half-life of promethazine is 15, that's an average. It's a broad range. Some people are much faster, some are slower, but that's the average of it. So for example, promethazine is 15 hours, so it takes 15 hours for that concentration to get cut in half, where oxycodone is 5.
Would anything in Ms. Kacee Terry's system lead you to believe that these drugs alone caused her death?
I mean, as I said earlier, this grouping of drugs is, because of the oxycodone being at 34 nanograms per mil, the grouping of the drugs was not a real cause of concern for me personally, outside of, like I said, special circumstances that the medical examiner would have determined.
Would anything about these drugs together, how they interact together, give you any additional concern for potentially causing death?
Well, I mean, all 3 of the drugs, the main drugs, oxycodone, promethazine, and alprazolam, are all central nervous system depressants. So it was something to look at and think about, and it really comes down to like the tolerance that we discussed earlier, and I would look at oxycodone as kind of the primary drug here for concern, and with that being at 34, then it lessened the concern I would have. I mean, there are certainly many examples of multi-drug toxicity overdoses with alprazolam at 100. That's actually a fairly common, but you would expect a primary drug like oxycodone to be at a much higher concentration. So.
And we're not seeing.
And we're not seeing that in this case.
Okay. I'm going to just briefly scroll down on this exhibit just so there's a bunch of Chuck's reference comments, and then it talks about these drugs. We don't have to go into each one, but what's the point of including this section in your report?
So this is a stock reference comments that are published in every report. So every time these drugs are reported out, in our reports or in our cases, these stock comments get put in there, and it's basically just to help the submitting agent, the submitting agency, kind of interpret a little bit of what's going on in that case.
So nothing in this section, and it lists all the drugs that you found present here, but these are stock information, nothing pertains particularly to Ms. Terry in this section of your report.
No, every postmortem case that oxycodone is reported out has the exact same comment.
And that's true of all the drugs we see
Yes.
listed here, if you'll scroll down a little bit. We see oxymorphone, promethazine, that section is those are all stock.
Yes.
And then I believe down here we see your signature, is that right?
Yes.
Right, I have nothing further for you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name's Scott Williams. We met on video, but otherwise have never met in person, right?
That's true.
Just a few follow-up. We've got these levels that you're able to detect when you're doing your toxicology assessment, right?
Yes.
Of each of the drugs, and you've gone through them. By the way, let's talk about how these drugs might get in the body. Overwhelmingly, oxycodone is orally ingested, right?
That is true, yes.
Promethazine is generally orally ingested.
Yes.
Alprazolam is generally orally ingested, correct?
Yes.
All right, and then let me touch the promethazine just for a second, because you indicated, I mean, it is not even a controlled substance. You can buy it over the counter.
Yes.
And while it could act as a central nervous system depressant, it sometimes acts the opposite, right?
With certain people, yes.
So like me with my allergy pills.
Exactly.
Sudafed can do that, right? It can
Yep.
make people sleepy, or it can make people shaky.
Yep.
And as you indicated, promethazine considered an antihistamine, right?
Yes.
You looked at the promethazine aspect of this case and didn't see anything that was out of the normal in terms of the levels.
I mean, I would interpret that as someone that was just taking it probably continuously over a couple days. But,
Sorry to interrupt.
well, I just wanted to clarify, but, I wouldn't have any information to know that for sure.
Let's touch on that real quick. In your role here and in working with the prosecutor's office and such, were you provided information about the case?
I was provided a small amount during like a pretrial hearing.
But not a medical history?
No, I never.
Of the deceased, right?
No.
So, what your interpretations are in general?
Yeah, based on just 20 years of experience in reviewing many, many cases.
In all those many, many cases, in reviewing those, you look at this and it looks like a pretty regular promethazine user's result.
Yes.
Looks like an oxycodone user's drug result, I think you indicated, as far as you can tell.
Yes, I mean, this falls very much in the expected therapeutic range.
Now, with the potential, the metabolite, to understand how much, assuming the oxymorphone is a metabolite. Again, you can't be sure, it's possible. That drug can be orally ingested as well, right?
Yes.
It's combinative in its effects with oxycodone.
Yes.
And, but it can also be a metabolite, and you, with your experience, interpreted that's probably what's going on here.
Probably based on that ratio, if the oxymorphone was at, say, equal concentrations, then I would think either both drugs may have been taken, or there may be some sort of metabolic metabolism, polymorphism, or change in this person that maybe doesn't allow the breakdown of that drug as normal humans would.
All right, and also we have a half-life. So if this oral medication, the time that it's taken over the period between that and this blood result that gives you the toxicology analysis ability, this is metabolizing, right? And while it sounds to me like you're saying it really varies greatly with different people in different circumstances, et cetera, it's about a 5-hour half-life.
Yes.
So does this tell you anything, given, notwithstanding the generalizations and the basic estimations that are involved, about how much somebody would have taken, say, 6 hours before to have this result, what the result would have been closer in time to 6 hours before?
Well, I mean, theoretically, 6 hours, you could roughly double it. But again, that's a general.
Right, I was trying to understand because I don't, otherwise, it's certainly not the way you do, what a 5-hour half-life is, and whether I was correct in suggesting that she could have had a result double that, 6 hours, double that.
Yeah.
6 more hours before.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, I mean, it takes roughly 5 half-lives in general to eliminate a drug from a system. But, I'm not able to, because I'm not sure if you're asking this, so I just want to clarify, I'm not able to look at this drug concentration and make any sort of predictions on how much was taken or when it was taken.
Right,
Okay.
we might call that reverse extrapolation,
Yeah.
right? But if you knew how much somebody took, strike that, I'm sorry, the half-life, as you indicated, would go from a large number to half of that in 5 hours, right?
Yes.
So, again, these estimations, but with this numbers, we've got a 68, according to that, we would have a 68 nanogram level, presumably, and 6 hours before this result.
Theoretically, yes.
And then, what about 6 hours before that?
I mean, yeah, you could just keep doing that
Keep
math,
doubling,
but
right?
again, for that to be kind of meaningful, I would, you'd have to kind of know when the drug was being taken and things like that, right?
Right. I mean, you would, for instance, you could know if you knew a time that almost certainly a drug wasn't being administered by the person orally, right? If you knew the last time,
Yes, yes,
then you would have a better idea of extrapolating.
yes.
And then you indicated your sort of toxicologist opinions about how these would impact the person whose blood you're testing. And you did agree, didn't you, that this Promethazine level is at the low threshold of, according to those stock ranges of death, right?
Or at the high end of therapeutic, but yes, in certain drug combinations, it can be found in that.
And
depth.
half full, half empty, but
Yeah.
your own stock description here is that it's therapeutic to a certain range, and frankly, then you indicate a range that could result in death, and that's just in relation to alprazolam, right? On your stocks.
Yes,
Yeah.
and usually those are not alprazolam alone, but alprazolam with other drugs.
Like opiates.
Yes.
And then that's because there's combinative effects of all of these things, especially when they're central nervous system depressants, right?
Yes.
But when you were asked about each of these drugs and in combination, questions on the subject, it sounds to me that ultimately you leave it up to a medical examiner to make final conclusions about cause of death.
I mean, it's just not part of my job.
And it is part of the medical examiners, that's your understanding?
Yes.
Nothing further, thank you.
Any follow-up?
Just very briefly. I just want to make clear that the names that we're talking about, for instance, promethazine and alprazolam, are there other names for these drugs that people may typically hear?
I mean, these are the scientific names. There would be trade names tied to all of these on like what you would, if you received a prescription, there'd be a name tied to that, like Xanax.
Okay, so Xanax is what?
Is alprazolam.
Is there a different name for promethazine that you might see more commonly?
It may be in Zyrtec. It's just over-the-counter allergy medication. I honestly am not 100% sure which ones. These drugs can be found in different trade names.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Williams asked you a bit about half-lives and if you're able to double the amount. You said theoretically you can do that, but that's not something that you would rely on without knowing when a drug was taken. Is that fair?
yes.
And why is that not reliable?
Well, I mean, you just can't do it forever. I mean, you can theoretically say, for example, with oxycodone, that 5 hours before it may have doubled in concentration on average. But, if you try and extend that too far back, then you start getting into unknowns that I just don't have information on.
If we just double the oxycodone level here one step, again, my math is bad, 68, I believe. Is that still within therapeutic range for somebody that has been taking it and has some kind of tolerance?
Yes.
Nothing further, thank you.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. You can step down.
Thank you.
This witness be released.
No objection.
Yes.
Here to go. Stay ready with your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor, statement called Dr. Ben Murie.
Please come forward, sir. Come on up here near the clerk and we'll get you sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you shall give in the case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes. Come on up here and have a seat. If you can keep that mic in front of you at all times, we'll be able to make a good record and we'll all be able to hear. Appreciate you being here, counsel.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning. Would you tell us your name, please?
Good morning. First name is Ben. Last name is Murie, spelled M-U-R-I-E.
And what is your occupation?
I am an assistant medical examiner at the Utah Office of the Medical Examiner.
How long have you been at that office?
It'll be about just shy of 3 years.
Were you engaged in that occupation before 3 years ago?
Yes,
Where was that?
in Las Vegas, Nevada.
And how long did you work in Las Vegas in that capacity?
About 2.5 years.
Were you similarly employed before that time?
No, before that, I was still finishing my training in forensic pathology.
All right. So I was going to ask you about that. What is your educational background that led you to that occupation?
Sure. So I completed 4 years of medical school in Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania. After that time, I did 4 more years of residency training in the field of clinical pathology and anatomic pathology in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And then after that, another year of specialized forensic pathology training in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
I am not entirely sure what pathology actually means. Would you please tell us that?
Yeah, generally speaking, it's the study of disease, and it could be. I think that's generally a pretty good way to say it. So, in a hospital setting, a pathologist may look at tissue under the microscope to diagnose, inflammatory conditions, or cancer, other disease processes. But for me, I deal with people who are dead.
Okay, that's a blunt way to put it, I guess. What is the difference between clinical and anatomic pathology?
Anatomic pathology I'll describe this in a hospital setting. That would be if the doctor who would look at a surgical specimen under the microscope. So if a surgeon cuts out an appendix or a gallbladder, the anatomic pathologist would review that and make a diagnosis. A clinical pathologist could also be a hospital doctor, but they would be doing some of the laboratory side of the hospital work. Perhaps like when if you get a blood drawn and it goes down to the laboratory, there's a pathologist in charge down there, and that's a clinical pathologist.
All right, and so you completed 4 years, you said, residency in each of those specialties.
Yes.
Are you, and maybe this is a stupid question, you are a medical doctor, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned that you did an additional year in forensic pathology. How does that differ?
Forensic pathology fellowship would be after completing the 4 years of residency, and there we would focus on the practice of an autopsy. And so, not every day, but almost every day, we would have a deceased person and perform an examination on them, and that went on for a year.
And after those training circumstances, that's when you went to work in Las Vegas as a medical examiner?
Correct.
Are there board certifications required to be a forensic medical examiner?
I'm not sure if they're required, but I am board certified in anatomic pathology and clinical pathology and forensic pathology.
What do you have to do to be board certified?
You should complete the training years, and then there are examinations that you need to take to be board certified.
So you took 3 probably really fun tests to gain those 3 certifications?
I wouldn't call them fun, but I did take 3 exams, yes.
And do you have ongoing continuing education type requirements to maintain that certification?
Yes.
What are those?
So I do need to have a certain amount of medical education credits. And so every year or about, I need to submit the medical education requirements I've completed. There are some continuing test questions that I answer throughout the year that helps maintain my certifications.
Okay. Is your work also reviewed occasionally?
You mean at the office?
Yes.
Yes, sometimes.
And you are current in your ongoing continuing education?
Yes.
What, in general, is the purpose of a medical examiner?
In general, the purpose would be to determine a cause of death or a manner of death. Both a cause and a manner of death for anybody that comes in the office.
Okay, what's the difference between those 2 phrases that you just used?
Yeah, a cause of death would be the kind of the final or physiologic derangement is sort of the word, the process that the body is starting to die. So that would be the cause. So for example, if somebody had a heart attack and dropped down and died, after an examination, likely the cause of death would be coronary artery disease or atherosclerosis or sclerotic cardiovascular disease, something like that. Then a manner of death, on the other hand, is more referring to the circumstances surrounding a person's death. So we have 5 options to choose from, and they are homicide, suicide, accident, natural, and undetermined. And so manner of death would be one of those 5 choices.
Okay, what is the purpose of determining the manner of death?
For my purposes, it's for documentation for the state and epidemiology. That's kind of my focus.
Is it meant to have any legal effect?
It could, but I don't know necessarily that it is meant that way. I'm not sure.
All right. Have you, in your past experience, dealt or worked specifically with insulin overdose cases?
Occasionally.
All right. Can you recall how many off the top of your head?
Not very many. They are, in my experience, there's been a few, probably less than 10.
And that's between both Nevada and Utah?
Yeah, that I can remember right now.
Okay. And what do you typically review in preparation for writing your report?
So it is case by case dependent, but generally speaking, when I'm generating my report, I'll review the autopsy or examination findings, and then review the pertinent background history, pertinent medical record. Sometimes law enforcement records are available too. So those are, that's pretty typical.
What type of background history are you referring to and reviewing for after an autopsy?
Yeah, so we have a, there's a group in my office called the medical legal investigators, or the death investigators, I guess. I don't remember the exact term at the moment, but their job is to go to the scene of a death and gather information and write that down into a narrative so I can read through it before beginning the autopsy, and I can refer to it later on as well.
Was that investigation team involved in this particular case?
Yes.
And why is a medical record important to you?
It tells some of the story of what happened prior to death, if it's available. And there's other cases where a person may be dead in their house, and all that's, we don't really have a lot of what led up to the event, but we do have some record of a previous doctor visit or something.
All right. And in an insulin overdose case in particular, would the medical record be important to you?
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, that has a documentation of some of the lab values that may have, may have come up since the initial admission until time of death.
Would you anticipate or expect a medical record to contain information that may not be available readily upon autopsy or toxicology?
Could you please repeat the question?
Like, I am not sure. Would you expect a medical record, a chart from a patient to perhaps contain information that wouldn't be readily apparent from an autopsy or toxicology result?
Yes.
Would that be the case in an insulin overdose?
It certainly could be.
And what process do you typically follow when you conduct an autopsy?
The autopsy usually begins as some of my support staff, my technicians, they'll have the body on a table for me, and then I'm able to do an external examination of the body where we document, it could be hair color, presence or absence of tattoos, presence or absence of injury, etc. Just head to toe examination externally of the body. After that point, then we begin with an internal examination of the body, and that's where we make the standard Y-shaped incision on the front of the torso and examine the organs inside.
And you do that both just visually and microscopically?
Not always microscopically, but yes, visually.
And would it be fair to say that there are autopsies where the cause of death is immediately apparent from just viewing the decedent?
Yes.
For example, a gunshot wound or stab wound or something like that?
Yes.
In this particular case, was the cause of death immediately apparent to you?
No.
Let me, and you did prepare a medical report, or, I'm sorry, a medical examiner's report in this case.
Correct.
Can I show you Exhibit 29? It'll take just a minute to come up. Okay, do you see that on your monitor?
Yes.
And what is that document?
This is a copy of my autopsy report.
All right, does it look to accurately reflect what you prepared in this case?
So far.
Okay. If that changes, let me know.
Okay.
All right, state moves to admit Exhibit 29.
Sorry, I missed the number.
29.
No objection.
We're not going in order.
Court
That's fine.
received states 29, wish to publish.
Thank you, Judge. So the first two pages are, I don't mean to characterize it for you, but would that be accurate to say that those are your diagnoses and conclusions, and the remaining pages describe your support for those diagnoses and conclusions? Do we want to scroll through that quickly?
Am I able to? Oh,
So those are the first two pages.
okay. Okay.
Stop there for just a second. Do you recognize the signature on that page?
Yes,
And who is that?
that is mine.
And below that is a handwritten date.
Correct.
What does that date signify?
That's the date I completed my report.
All right. Can we, sorry, Chelsea, go back up to the top? Is there indicated on this report the date of the actual autopsy?
Yes, at the top on the right-hand side, where it says date and time of exam,
And that is,
August 16th, 2024.
okay, so it took you roughly, I guess, 5 months to complete the report?
Yeah, that sounds right if my math is correct.
Okay, and I'm sorry, Chelsea, go back up. The date of death is also noted
Correct.
as 8/15/2024.
Yes.
Why is that important to you?
This is documentation. This could be, relevant if there's a large gap in between the time of death and the time of autopsy. But I guess it does tell me that the death happened relatively soon before the exam started.
Okay, that was gonna be my next question. All right, so, I wanna go down to page 3. And this, it's labeled external examination. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Just generally speaking, did you notice anything in that external examination that explained the cause of death to you?
No.
You mentioned, go down a little bit, Chelsea, please. Okay, stop there, an upper, sorry, keep going. All right, and now you noted evidence of injury, and injuries of the upper extremities. You talk about some contusions. What is a contusion?
A contusion would just be a large word for bruise.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It means a bruise.
Okay. Were any of these contusions or bruises that you noted something that would be a cause of death?
No.
And you noted some on the upper extremities. There's one on the lower abdomen, on the right shoulder arm, right forearm, left shoulder, left arm, and the right antecubital fossa. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes.
As well as then down below that, also one on the right buttock?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Do you have any information about what would have caused any of those bruises?
I don't know.
Okay, just something you noted because that was part of your examination.
Correct.
Would they be consistent with medical intervention?
Some of them could.
All right. Would they also possibly be consistent with injections?
Yeah, they could.
You just don't know what?
But I don't know.
You're
I mean, I did mention in where it says other, there was other left antecubital fossa that it could be medical intervention too.
All right, and so that's going to be the next explanation. What's a right antecubital fossa?
Oh, that's like if you put out your hand and you feel your elbow, it's just the opposite side from your elbow. So where a typical blood draw happens.
And then after making your observations on the external examination, you proceeded to an internal examination?
Correct.
And if we just scroll down a little bit, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on any of this, but would it be fair to say that your findings on internal examination were all unremarkable or normal for the most part?
If you want to scroll down to the cardiovascular, I think she had a large heart and some dilation of, there it is, right ventricular dilation. So that's not entirely normal. And then there was also a finding of she had one kidney. So that wouldn't really be normal. But I didn't note those.
Okay, let me talk about the heart for just a second, if you could go back up, thank you. Is an enlarged heart something that happens at death or pre-morbid, pre-death?
It would happen before death.
What is that symptomatic of?
I mean, there's a number of reasons to have a enlarged heart or a dilated heart. If somebody has some systemic issues, obesity can lead to it, hypertension, high blood pressure can lead to it, chronic alcohol use. In this case, it wasn't an enormous heart, but it was on the large side.
Was it a finding that you considered to be indicative of a cause of death?
In some people, it could be.
Was it in this case?
I didn't think so. It was in this case.
Okay. And you also noted, as you said, the single kidney. If we can go down a little bit, Chelsea. And urogenital system. You
Yes.
noted kidney on the right was absent.
Correct.
Did that appear to you to having been removed at some point or having been born that way?
My understanding is that's how she was born, but that's what I understand right now anyway.
Okay, could you tell that from autopsy, or whether it was congenital or removed later on down the road?
I mean, if it was removed, there might be some surgical clips or a big scar or something like that.
You didn't see anything like that?
Not that I recall, and not that I noted here.
Okay, and the remaining kidney, what was its status?
So if you look there, it says surface, second line down from urogenital system, it says granular. So that's indicative of some scarring that's happened in the kidney.
What does that mean to you?
There's a number of things that can cause scarring of the kidney, disease processes, but it's a kidney that has undergone some stress over time.
Would that have been sufficient in your determination to be a cause of death in this particular case?
No, not by itself.
Did you see in the course of your autopsy any indications that this lady had any form of cancer?
I did not.
And if you could go down again, please. In microscopy, you see, thank you, down at the brain, and you listed indications in the brain that were consistent with ischemia. Do you see that?
Yes.
What is ischemia?
Ischemia would be low blood flow to the brain, so it would be poor oxygenation of the brain tissue.
And was this significant to your determination of cause of death?
Let me back up. I wouldn't necessarily say low blood flow to the brain, but I mean low oxygen to the brain. And in this case, it's evidence that she had some kind of period of low oxygenation.
Okay. What happens with low oxygen to the brain?
Well, just like every tissue in your body, every organ in your body needs oxygen to perform its functions. And so without that, you can have cell death. And when you have cell death, you have, altered or diminished function of those organs.
Would brain or ischemia of the brain be consistent with an insulin overdose?
You can have low blood sugar that can have some similar overlapping, similar changes. And so it's I would say it's more like a low sugar kind of thing.
Okay. All right. Under that, you listed additional studies including toxicology and insulin testing. If we could scroll up, Chelsea, please. No, other way, sorry, scroll down, stop, what? Perfect, thank you. Okay, why were additional studies necessary in this case?
Toxicology testing is sort of a routine thing that we do on almost all decedents or those who've died. Of course, there are some cases where we don't do it, but in this case, that's a routine thing. And then, given the history I was given about, a possible insulin or the hypoglycemia that she arrived in, that's why we did some of these tests. Although she did have a long hospitalization, but yeah, that's the reason why.
Okay, you say long hospitalization. Is 3 days in your mind a long hospitalization?
Yeah, I guess for the purposes of testing for drugs or whatever, of course, if somebody has gone to the hospital on day 1 and then at day 3 we test their blood for a drug or something, it is possible that that drug is gone or changed, the
Over the
concentration.
course of the 3 days that
Yeah.
okay. What does hypoglycemia mean?
And that would be low blood sugar.
All right, is that another name, I guess, for an insulin overdose?
Well, it would be the effect of, it could be the effect of an insulin overdose.
Okay, that makes sense. If you overdose on insulin, it causes hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar.
Yes.
All right. Why is low blood sugar problematic?
Well, just like your organs need oxygen to function, they also need energy to function, and that energy is usually in the form of glucose. Glucose being essentially a sugar that your organs use. And your brain loves glucose; it uses it very readily. And so, if you have if you have a diminished amount of blood sugar, that can again alter or diminish your organs' functions.
All right. You list in here insulin, C-peptide, and free and total insulin. And what do those two things mean?
So insulin is a chemical that can be made by the body, and that helps to regulate our blood sugar. C-peptide is a part of that also. And so when your body makes insulin, it's made in kind of a large molecule, and attached to that insulin part is a piece called C-peptide. And your body takes the C-peptide off to make the insulin, more just plain old insulin. So the presence of C-peptide would be a clue that there's natural, or in other words, endogenous insulin present.
Can you say that last sentence for me one more time?
The presence of C-peptide would indicate that there is like what I call endogenous, or insulin made by the body.
Okay. Does insulin that is injected also contain that C-peptide molecule?
Not to my knowledge.
All right, so this notation about insulin with C-peptides would be specific to any insulin that was naturally produced within the body?
Yes.
And what about free and total insulin?
That just talks about the insulin that is present in the body. So some insulin can be bound to other proteins, some not, and that's not bound is free.
And what do you mean by bound?
I'd have to refresh my recollection on the biochemistry of that, but what I seem to remember is that there's other proteins that will bind to certain chemicals in your blood, and so when they're bound, they're bound to a protein.
Okay. Would that indication there about the quantity of free and total insulin be an indication of artificially induced insulin or naturally occurring insulin?
I wouldn't be able to tell with that.
Okay. So when you completed your autopsy on this case, were you able to decide what had caused the death without additional information?
Do you mean when I finished the autopsy that day? Or
That day?
that day? No, I needed more information.
Okay. What more information did you seek?
I reviewed medical records. I believe we did a microscopic analysis. That usually takes a couple weeks after, or sometime after. And then law enforcement records.
What about toxicology?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, and toxicology results. And all that takes time to come back.
All right. Did you ever speak to the toxicologist about this case?
I don't remember. I don't think so.
All right. So your reliance on toxicology as part of developing the conclusions that you did were just from this report, not from a conversation that you had with that individual?
Yeah. Yes.
So going back up then to your conclusions on the first page. Thank you. Leaving aside for a minute number 1, you listed various pathologic diagnoses 2 through 9, correct?
Correct.
Were any of those, in your opinion, after conducting the autopsy and the additional information that you received, determined to be the cause of her death?
No.
So it's fair to say that number 1 is what you found to be her cause of death?
Yes.
And that was the combined effects of oxycodone, alprazolam, promethazine, and probable exogenous insulin use?
Yes.
Were the combination of the first 3, oxycodone, alprazolam, and promethazine, sufficient by themselves to have caused the death?
I mean, their effects can be added up. In my opinion, though, in this case, no.
With the probable exogenous insulin, well, let me ask you first, what does exogenous insulin use mean?
That would be insulin from outside the body.
So insulin that's been injected in most likelihood?
Yes.
And that's compared to the term you used earlier, endogenous?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So endogenous is naturally occurring insulin in the body?
Yes.
And exogenous is introduced into the body from externally?
Right.
Okay. Would the effects of what you noted, probable exogenous insulin use, would have been sufficient for her death, even absent the oxycodone, alprazolam, and promethazine?
Yeah, from my recollection, the hypoglycemia or the low sugar was quite low, and so yeah, I think in the absence of those first ones, the exogenous insulin would be a key factor.
Okay. We talked a little bit earlier about the autopsy occurring on August 16th and the report being completed on January 22nd. Is that an unusual gap of time to complete a report after an autopsy?
I mean, generally we strive to have reports done, 90% of our reports done before 90 days. But, sometimes backlogs happen and some cases take some more consideration. In this case, I don't remember exactly why it took roughly 5 months or whatever, but it could be backlog, could be just continued consideration.
Okay, all right. That's all the questions I have. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams, do you have an estimate of how long your cross will be?
More than 5 minutes.
Dr. Murie, are you available to come back after lunch?
Sure. At what time would that be?
1 o'clock?
Yeah.
Would that work? Are we okay to do that?
No objection here.
No objection.
Okay, as long as you're okay, come back at 1.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I will remind you that you are still under oath. Mr. Williams, when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Dr. Murie. Thanks for sticking with us over the lunch break.
Of course.
I would like to talk to you mainly about what you do, who you do it for, what kind of training you need, kind of output you and your position generate, okay? Let's be general, in other words, rather than specific to start with, at least with the report.
Okay.
You're a medical examiner and have been for a number of years here in Utah,
Correct.
and were a medical examiner in Nevada.
Yes.
Total of, I missed exactly, how many years have you been a medical examiner before you come to court today?
6.5 to 7.
In
Wait,
that,
wait. 2.5 to 6. Sorry. 5.5, 6.
in that capacity, we've heard about a lot of training you have had, and that includes a lot of medical training, right?
Yes.
You're a medical doctor.
Yeah. It's a osteopathic medical doctor. Same. Yeah.
Learning about some of the things you testified, you made conclusions about, like toxicology, right?
Yes.
Not a toxicologist. You learn about that in the course of your medical training.
Correct.
All sorts of other training that a doctor gets, right?
Yes.
And my point here is when you bring to the medical examiner position a vast history of training, education on medicine. Agreed?
Yes.
And then you have your practical experience as a medical examiner day to day, right?
Yes.
Which includes applying all of that training to your job as a medical examiner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're using that medical training and that expertise when you're doing your medical examiner work, right?
Yes.
And the reason I'm kind of saying medical versus medical examiner is, as you said it, you don't actually treat the living.
That's correct.
My favorite line from the first Men in Black.
I don't recall that one.
Medical examiners, I hate the living, said the medical examiner. But the point is that you're still doing medicine and applying medicine and utilizing all that training when you do your job as a medical examiner, even though you're not examining living people.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. And then, now let's talk to the difference then. As a medical examiner, you're taking that training, using that training, but involving causes and manners of death, right?
Yes.
That's your primary role as in the medical examiner's office, right?
Yes.
It's set aside, it's a specific office for medical examiners in the state of Utah, right?
I'm sorry, you said it was set aside?
It's not in a hospital.
Oh, yes, that's correct.
It's not in a clinical setting. It's in its own office set apart or set aside for people to do medical examining, to analyze and do casework on deceased people.
Yes, it's a state office.
In that capacity, you also bring to the table forensic activity, right?
Yes.
Forensic analysis. Is that a better way to apply it, say it?
Yes.
Forensic part means related to investigations. Is that fair?
Yeah, the way I understand it, it's for the people. Yeah.
But I mean, it's got its own special aspect of investigation. Is that fair?
Yes.
You describe it. Well, I'll just stay out of it for a sec. Describe to the jury that forensic part as you see it.
Yeah. So we have an investigatory aspect of our job. To find out the circumstances in which a person died, and then the other aspect is when these go to a court like now, or when there's other types of litigation. I think that's where the forensic part goes along with it.
Okay, and I guess what I'm getting at is that beyond just sort of looking at all the medicine and assessing a body with your medical knowledge, you're also assessing a case. Agreed?
Yeah, we call them cases. Maybe not in the same way that another organization may assess, but primarily I'm just trying to figure out how a person died.
Your cause and manner of death.
Correct.
But, so let's talk about that for a minute. Not everybody who dies ends up getting an autopsy, right?
That's true.
People get autopsies under are brought to the office to get an autopsy under unattended deaths, right?
Yes.
Suspicious or police-related investigation deaths, right?
Yes.
Things of that manner. And so that's what I mean by a case. It's not just like a medical case, it also has this forensic aspect. It's tied to other sorts of efforts to find out information. Is that fair?
Yes.
And it's very frequently, if not always, law enforcement related.
Yeah.
So you're working in the investigative capacity with law enforcement, right?
I wouldn't say we're working with, we do work together, but I would say work with, not for.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was going to get to that together. You spoke to the jury a little bit about the autopsy efforts. And let me just lay those out a little bit more along the lines that I'm kind of thinking about cases and casework in this theme that I'm stuck on. Okay? You look at the body, you apply your medical knowledge, you look at toxicology and all of those very scientific, observable things to help make your conclusions on cause and manner of death, right?
Yes.
But you also get involved in finding out information from law enforcement investigative efforts.
Yes.
And you want that information in order to do the best job you can at reaching manner of death, right?
Yes.
Law enforcement are almost always attending an autopsy, right?
It varies from case to case.
They do often?
If there is, if they have certain questions, or if sometimes for education purposes they do. I don't know exactly how many times, but
Fair enough.
yeah.
In this case, they did, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Law enforcement, as you indicated, on direct, I mean, among the things that you do is you seek out information in your investigation to try to determine manner of death from law enforcement agencies, right?
Yes,
You get police reports, is that correct?
yes,
You talk to detectives or others that might have the information, right?
yes,
By the way, you also get medical reports, like in this case, it was from hospitalization. You were able to get those medical reports as well, right?
yes.
So you get medical information. I won't be general anymore. Let's talk about Kacee Terry. You get medical history, right?
Yes,
You saw the toxicology. You already talked about that, right?
correct.
Some of those things you have to wait a bit for sometimes,
Yes,
for those toxicology reports and things, but this is part of the process. And then you work with trying to learn what there is to learn from law enforcement efforts to reach your conclusions, right?
yes,
That, again, includes, you can call a detective if you have a question that might, the answer to which might help you render your conclusion on manner of death, right?
yes, yes,
In this particular case, you know from your report that is in evidence that you did do outreach, did speak to Detective Farney, right?
yeah, I believe so.
And she could talk to you and you could talk to her freely in the course of your generating your investigation and ultimate report, right? Nothing stopping
So,
that.
no,
Questions for each other you can ask, right?
yes,
Also with other officers, and for instance, let me add this component, you actually have an investigator in your office, right?
that's right.
So that investigator is sort of assigned to your autopsy case as well to go find out facts to help inform your opinion or your decision.
Yes, and there could be other investigators involved too.
Sometimes those investigators who work at your office actually have other jobs as police officers in certain agencies, right?
I don't know everyone specifically, but I know that's a possibility, or some do.
In this particular case, your investigator who was assigned to this case, do you know what agency that person worked for when they weren't acting as an investigator for you?
I don't.
But this investigator often, and in fact in this case also may go to a scene
Yes,
of a death. But officers might call it a scene of a crime, but a scene that is relevant to the investigation you're doing with them, right?
right.
Get police reports, right?
Yes,
Talk to agents about what witnesses have said. Correct?
yeah,
Learn what conclusions may be the opinion or have been reached by police investigators, right?
yes,
Working that way with the science, the medical, and then the law enforcement and law enforcement activities, you are ultimately looking to make, to the best of your ability, a forensic conclusion on manner of death, right?
correct.
Now, how many autopsies have you done? Hundreds?
As of today, probably over 2,000
That's hundreds, I guess, times
something.
something. Okay, 2,000 autopsies. You do this, you work in this capacity, you ultimately generate reports. Now, sometimes even after you've generated an initial report, further information might be garnered, and you can actually amend your report, right?
Yes.
At any time, if you got information that you thought affected your ultimate manner of death decision, you could amend it.
I could.
So let's talk about all that effort and all that information and the things that you talked about medically and all the information you had on January 22nd, 2025. You ultimately issued your medical examiner report that was entered into evidence, right?
Yes. If that's the date. I don't particularly remember the date on it, but
Fair enough.
yeah.
It's on mine, and I thought that was developed on direct. Whatever, it's on the exhibit, and it's
Yes.
entered, I think it's 37. You don't have it in front of you?
I do not have it in front of me.
Let me see, you know what, this would be worth it, because as I look at the report, which ended up getting entered into as an exhibit in its total, it has some stamps and things on it. I'm not gonna try to ask you what they all are, I'm gonna go back to this question, just when you issue your report, because I don't know what the other stamps mean. Can I approach the witness? Ignore my highlights, does this look like your report, you saw page 1 up?
Yes, it does.
On the second page, is your signature on it?
Yes.
And is it 1/22/25,
Yes.
handwritten?
Handwritten.
You wrote it?
Yes.
Okay. And on that date, pursuant to everything you had done, everything we heard you looked at, you rendered your professional conclusion as the manner of death is undetermined, correct?
Correct.
And that's January 22nd, 2025. An abundance of completeness here. You're sitting here on the stand today. That is still your conclusion, correct?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Redirect?
Yes, thank you, Judge. I don't want to keep you too long, Dr. Murie. You indicated, you answered one of Mr. Williams' questions that you work with, not for law enforcement. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Does law enforcement dictate in any direction what they want or expect your conclusions to be in doing a medical examination?
Their input is helpful, but it doesn't ultimately is my decision.
And when he was going through some of the information that you rely on informing your opinions, you mentioned medical history,
Yes.
which we talked about also, right?
Correct.
In this particular case, was her entire medical history important to you, or just the final hospitalization?
I mean, I had some, the most important was probably the final terminal records or the final hospitalization. I believe I was aware of some past medical history. I don't remember the details.
Okay, so for example, you didn't find any information regarding any mental health treatment, anything like that?
I don't remember.
Okay, but that didn't go into your conclusion?
Ultimately, no.
And you said you learned what is available from the law enforcement agency and received their reports, correct?
Yes.
And you reviewed those?
Yes.
Let me just show you. This is the police report in this case from Lone Peak Police Department. Did you review this entire thing?
I do not have that entire thing in my record.
Okay, and it's, 500-ish pages. You didn't read all of that, correct?
No.
Did you have at your disposal the FBI analyses in this case?
I did not.
Did you have the Utah Bureau of Forensic Science reports in this case?
No, I don't think so.
Did you have available to you all of the text messages between the decedent and the accused in this case?
No.
And manner of death, you said earlier that that's a medical determination, not a legal one, correct?
For my purposes, yeah, medical or even statistical.
All right. And your determination in this case was that it was undetermined. What does that mean?
That means I did not feel, at least for my purposes, I could not categorize the cause of death into one of the other 4 manners.
Okay. And those other manners that you talked about were natural,
Yes.
accident, homicide,
Yes.
suicide,
Yes.
accident.
Correct.
Did I already say that one?
I think maybe you did, but
Okay.
there's 5 total.
Was there another one that I missed?
Maybe you missed undetermined.
Undetermined. Thank you. Undetermined is the 5th. Okay. And you found it undetermined. You didn't feel the manner of death was homicide.
No, I fault everything. At the end, the evidence that I had went to undetermined.
And would that be because you could not say from a medical standpoint how the exogenous insulin was introduced into Kacee Terry's body?
I would say I couldn't. That's part of it, and also I couldn't say how the other substances were administered.
Okay. And you also did not find it to be a suicide, correct?
Correct.
And that is one of the options available to you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the state of Utah brought you here as the medical examiner to render an opinion that you maintain as of today that this is not a homicide manner of death, and apparently pointing out they didn't give you all the information?
I mean, I don't know if I always have the entirety of every investigation for every case, but based on
Could have, right?
possible.
To see if whether your conclusion would change perhaps to suicide? That could happen, right?
It could.
Nothing further.
Anything else from the state?
Having opened that door, you didn't make the change to suicide, correct?
I did not.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, doctor. Feel free to step down.
Thank you.